This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 73 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today our episode is all about when things go wrong when you're travelling. Now, it's a bit funny because we actually don't want things to go wrong. You know, we worry about things going wrong. We make plans to avoid things going wrong when we travel. But the simple fact is, things go wrong all the time. Plus, it often turns out to make a really interesting story or to make a trip particularly memorable or all kinds of other advantages. So perhaps we need to reframe things and think about when things go wrong as not being the worst case scenario most of the time. And certainly that's the case today with the three guests I have and the things that went wrong on their travels. Probably some of them were particularly bad at the time, but they all survived and have had some, and they now have an interesting story to tell. So, I'll let you decide by the end what you think about when things go wrong. My first guest today is Luke Mackin of Wild Sumatra. So he's on the podcast for the first time today. And he lives in remote Sumatra with his family. And we're talking about mistakes that he's made along his travels and things that go wrong. And he has two very interesting stories. His first one particularly is hilarious, and I had no idea where it was going. I'll let you listen.
In the States, I was a teacher, and I taught I taught a couple different places, but one job I had was teaching at a behavior school. So for kids that really couldn't handle regular school, they were sent to this special school to help them with behavior issues and psychological issues and stuff like that.
Right.
And so I taught there. It was a small class. One day, it was the first day of class, and my sister was also a teacher. She's an English teacher, and she came to visit on this day. Mm-hmm. And so we're there at school, and the kids come in, and they're just being completely disrespectful, not listening to anything, just being so rude. And I'm like, all right, everyone needs to quiet down and stuff. And they just keep going, like louder even.
Oh, how annoying.
Like, guys, you need to quiet down. That's enough. Okay, everyone up here. And they're not listening. And so finally, I'm just like fed up. I'm embarrassed. My sister's watching,
Yeah.
And I'm just like, quiet, really loud. And in that moment, I woke up and I was on, an overnight plane to Indonesia. And to my horror, the cabin just gets so quiet. Like, I realized that I yelled, like, not just in my dream, but also in real life.
Oh no!
And I just melted into my seat.
You poor thing.
It was horrible. I felt so embarrassed. No one said anything. It was but I know somewhere, all these Taiwanese people are like, Americans are the ugliest people. They're so rude.
You shouted at us all to be quiet. We can't believe
I'm
it.
so ashamed. Yeah.
Oh,
so
no.
that was...
Oh, that's terrible. Sorry, it's terrible, but it's really funny.
Yeah.
Oh, dear me. I don't know how to respond to that.
Yeah.
That was not what I was expecting. That is hilarious. It's funny though. The only thing it reminds me of is I was traveling one time with my with a Slovak friend, because I used to live in Slovakia, and we'd gone to England to go walking and hiking together, and we're on some long train trips, and occasionally one of us would nod off or something, and she was asleep on this train trip. And then she woke up, but obviously wasn't quite awake. And she looked at me and was just speaking to me in, a paragraph at a time, but all in Slovak. And I knew a few words, but not many. Like, she was a translator. Her English was perfect. But she just kept saying the same things to me in Slovak. And I'm just looking at her thinking, she's going to realize that, she knows I don't understand. But she just kept going. And then eventually I had to stop her and say, Tatiana, I don't understand you. And then she kind of shook her head and woke up better, woke up more fully. And she was like, oh, what was I doing? And I said, you were just chattering away to me in Slovak and I don't understand you. And then she said, oh, sorry. So I was like, no, I wish I could understand, but I just can't.
Telling all of her secrets.
Yeah, well, yes, I wonder, what was she telling me?
Yeah, right.
I had tried to learn the language, but it was really hard, and I'd only been there a few months in my defence, and she was speaking very quickly. So,
it is not easy to learn a language.
Dream talking, not dream shouting, thank goodness. Oh dear. Oh, that's excellent. Sorry, I can't. That's a great mistake. I love that story. Have you made any other terrible travel mistakes?
Well, this is more of a general expat mistake, maybe.
Oh yes.
So one day in our house, I noticed all these wasps flying kind of above our roof.
Right.
And yeah, there's a lot coming and going, and so I'm like, oh, what's going on over there? So I climb up onto this like play area for our kids that we had built, like a little bamboo hut kind of, and it's where I could peek onto the roof. And there was this massive wasp nest.
Ooh.
Hornet nest. It was just big, and these like big black and red, nasty looking hornets.
Ugh.
And so it's kind of in a not a great space because if the kids throw a ball or something, it could easily
make them angry,
easily cause problems. Yeah. And it was just a giant, thousands of hornets. We had been traveling in some. I guess it had built up, but pretty quickly it had built up to be gigantic. So I asked around, and a guy I knew, he said he could take care of it. And so he comes over to the house to scope it out, and we're looking at it and stuff. And he's like, oh yeah, I can do this. And I'm like, you've done this before? He's like, oh yeah, I often get honey from the forest. He's like a honey hunter.
Okay.
I'm like, these are quite different from bees.
Yeah.
Right. You know that, right? Like, and I'm thinking, like, obviously he knows. Like,
you assume if he's offered to do this that he knows enough. You think.
Right. And I'm like, I always like to defer to local knowledge. I don't want to be some arrogant person to tell him what to do. But I just want to make sure, like, these are not bees. Like, oh yeah, no problem. And so he told me his plan to come during the day and get like a piece of wood with glue on it and just like stick it on the front of the hive to block the hole. And I'm like, oh okay. And I'm like, so you're gonna come at night and stuff? He's like, no, I'll come, like in the afternoon or something. I'm like, is that because
is that I know really the best way?
Most there aren't many species of night wasps, and so I didn't think that. I know most things return to their nest at night, and they're much more docile and everything. So I was like, is that really? But he's like, yeah, it's no problem. I'm like, sure. Like, I really, really wanted to make sure because the chance of something going wrong, it would be very bad if it went wrong. And so you probably know where this is going.
I have an inkling.
So he comes over in the day, and we both go up there to that little bamboo hut, kind of, and he's got this long bamboo pole with this wooden thing, wooden plank on the end of it with the glue, and he starts sliding it across the roof, and almost instantly, they just start streaming out.
Oh no!
Just the vibration of the roof just caused them. Hundreds and thousands of them start coming out, and I'm like, I'm done. Like, I'm out of here.
I'm out of here.
I like run inside, immediately. And for some reason, he lingers. I don't really get why. And of course, he gets stung on the forehead, but he makes it in pretty soon after I did.
Right.
But it really hurt. I mean, those are like fire. They're so painful, and it was on his head, and so he's like in quite a bit of pain, and I feel awful. But then I'm like thinking like, oh, are they getting in the house? My kids or my toddlers are running around and stuff. These houses aren't exactly sealed up very well. And so I'm scanning and looking around, making sure they're not coming in. And then I think like, oh no, people in the street, could be someone crossing in the street. So I run to the front of the house to look out front. And I see this guy with his like 7-year-old kid, just walking with them. And then suddenly, like, they start getting attacked.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, and he like cradles, this is such a horrible moment. he cradles his son and, like, you know, gets down on the ground, like right in front of where the hive is, basically.
No. Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, run, like as loud as I can in Indonesian. And I'm like, if they stay there, they're gonna die, literally. Like,
yes,
you know,
they're just gonna get completely.
And so he gets up and runs, and it was like the worst moment of my time here. I feel like I just felt so horrible.
Oh no.
And so I also go outside, but around kind of, so I can see down the street, but far enough away from them. And so, like, for the next, like, 6 hours, I don't know, I just, like, wait out front.
And tell people not to come close.
Our house, I'm like, no, do not come here. I mean, both the guy that got stung in the head, the guy that was doing this folly, he had to go to the hospital, and so did this family.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I went over to their house later and, like, begged forgiveness and, paid for their hospital expenses. And
oh my God.
It was so bad. They were very gracious and everything.
And not really your fault either.
No, yeah. I was like, I tried to
happened to be your house that had the hornet's nest.
Yeah.
Oh no. Did you end up getting rid of the nest somehow?
So eventually, I think, was it that same night, the guy came back and was like, we'll try a different strategy at night. Like, good idea.
Yeah, great idea.
And so this time, kerosene. If you spray kerosene, and it's night, so they're all inside, and then you just, like, spray the kerosene. They can't fly.
Right.
I like Googled it, basically, how to do it.
Phew.
And so yeah, thanks Google. And yeah, so sprayed it all in there, and then they were dead, and that was it. But man, it was quite.
That's very
stressful. A couple
stressful.
months later, they came back.
Oh,
yeah.
No. Oh, God.
And then, so it was much easier this time. We knew the process, and it was no problem. But, oh, man, that was just that moment when he was just cradling his son, trying not to. Oh, my gosh. It's such a horrible image in my head. I felt so guilty.
Luke's two stories are both fascinating and hilarious in some ways, although I'm very glad I wasn't around when his hornet's nest was at its worst, because that sounds terrifying to me, and I'm glad that now he knows what to do. So all's well that ends well, I guess. Now, my next guest today is Kristen Truempy, and we are talking about the kinds of things that can go wrong when you've made plans, but for no fault of your own, the plans don't work out. And she has an interesting story to tell from a trip she took to South Africa.
I had booked this youth hostel in a place called Saldana because I had wanted to take sailing classes and actually have the experience of sleeping on a boat. But I had to be there early morning, and obviously there was no bus from Cape Town, so I had to sleep in Saldana. Now, it happens to be this place where they only have incredibly expensive hotels and otherwise nothing. So I was like, all right, I booked that hostel. I took the bus trip with the local bus company, and then we get there, and then the bus driver says, like, we'll wait because we are a bit surprised to learn that there's anything here.
Oh, gosh.
And I thought, okay. So we went up there, and then it turns out that the youth hostel had closed.
Oh, no.
About, 6 months ago. And for some reason, the booking system was still up.
Oh, no.
I don't know why. It happened to be a neighborhood. Now, I have to give a little bit of context. So for those of the listeners who have maybe never heard of it or don't remember it, South Africa had apartheid until 1994. Mm-hmm. So that means that, you had benches where, only black people could sit there, but no white people, and that kind of thing. So in South Africa, they make the distinction between white, black, and then colored. Mm-hmm. So, and they were all kept very separately. And if you think about it, 1994, in a context like that, is not that long ago.
No, it's really not.
So from a community point of view, you still have a lot of communities which are, mostly black, purely black, like 95% or something, or even 100%, right? Same with colored. So I ended up in a township, and that's apparently the last place you want to be in when you're in South Africa. So I was like, all right, so what now? And then one of the employees from the bus company said, you know what, you can come and sleep at my place, but just understand that this is a colored community, and they have literally never seen a white person here.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, that's fine with me. I didn't have a problem. And I said to her, like, look, yeah, that's fine. I'll pay you, and let's do this. So I went to her home, and the whole night, people kept coming to stare at me and interrupt me.
Oh my goodness.
And I think, by that time, I had been traveling for about 7 years by myself and definitely 10 years altogether.
Right.
So I actually thought it was hilarious. Also with the weird like sincerity, and maybe some of them were even slightly hostile. I don't know. She definitely wasn't, but some of them were like, "What are you doing here? Why?" And it wasn't quite clear. Like, is that just the way they ask questions, or was it a little bit hostile? As in, why are you here? What are you doing? I didn't really know. But I was like smiling a lot because I actually thought it was funny. I just because I felt like a zoo exhibit,
Yes,
like,
exactly. You're this strange like, Swiss girl in town.
Yes, and they all came to look the whole, until midnight. People came in to stare at me, and I think that situation. I think I was just so grateful that A, I had a lot of travel experience by the time that happened, and B, I also had quite a bit of psychology under my belt, give you the mental kind of framework to not freak out, because I think you could have put a lot of people in the same situation and it would have been the most horrible night of their life.
True. Yeah.
And it's just one where I think I will definitely always remember it, but because it's funny.
Yes. Yes, isn't it amazing? And what a fascinating experience to have, just because that hostel didn't exist anymore. Yep. You couldn't plan to have that experience. It's just something that happens when things go wrong, but often when things go wrong, something really, really interesting happens. So something went wrong. The youth hostel had closed down, but Kristen managed to have a really interesting experience instead. Nothing quite like that's ever happened to me, but I've certainly felt, I guess that same feeling of being almost the tourist attraction. When I lived in Japan, when I was living in a kind of a semi-rural part of Osaka, quite far from the city and close to Nara, where there were no other foreigners, it was quite common that I would get sort of unwanted attention because I was the only foreigner around. But of course, Japanese people are very polite about it, so I only felt sort of stared at and pointed at occasionally. And sometimes they do really weird things like come and give me gifts out of the blue, like they just, search through their bag and find something to give me just because I was a foreigner, which is another kind of weird because, like, I didn't do anything to deserve that. But anyway, so Kristen's what went wrong worked out okay as well. Now, my final guest today is Aggie Lim, who's been on the podcast before, but not for a while. This is from a chat we recorded a while back, and it was I think entertaining, but also a what went wrong story from a time when she was in New York with some friends.
Went to New York, I caught the bus because I was staying in New Jersey somewhere, and so I caught the bus into the main centre, but I was really sick, and I was with some friends, and we were going to catch the hop on hop off bus to go around, and so we ran down like 4 blocks, and in New York, the blocks are like, it's ridiculous how far each, like, and I was running and I was really sick, and I started off good, like right at the front of the line kind of, there's only 4 of us, and then I just trailed back, and before I knew, I was just walking like huffing and puffing, and by the time we got to the queue of where the bus was, it was just ridiculously long, and just standing there, and the heat really got to me. Oh, no. So basically I said, oh, look, I can't do this. I'm going to have to go back. So catching the bus, running, and finally getting there, I've got, I just can't do this anymore. I'm going to go back. And so I started heading back. But then I think that time it was like 10 o'clock at night, or it was coming to 10 o'clock at night. And because I stopped and I got soup. I've got this obsession with soup. I've always got to have soup no matter where I go. And so I found this place, had some soup, thought, oh, I feel better now. I'll walk back to the bus station, went, oh, things look different when it's dark. I'm not sure which one I'm meant to be at. And then I finally got there, and then but it was quite quiet. And I vaguely remembered the escalator that I had to go up, but it was quite narrow and it was quite tucked away. And then it reminded me, because I like watching crime programs.
Oh, no.
So, yeah.
This sounds bad.
So it reminded me of an episode of Law and Order Criminal Intent or something like that, where I think someone was getting stalked in a subway, and I'm walking and I could hear footsteps behind me, but I didn't want to look, and I've kind of subtly looked but not looked, and I thought, oh no, I've got to get up this escalator, but it was so narrow, and I didn't know what was up there, and then I had all these visions in my head of someone attacking me in some New York, underground bus station, and have I got my key in my hand so I can stab them and all this sort of thing. And I finally got up there, and then it was funny because I got up there and it was all enclosed. So it was this narrow walkway that was all enclosed, and then I thought, oh no, I've got to look for an opening. So I started looking for an opening and thinking, oh God, I've got to get out. Because there was no one there.
Were you still being followed? Could you still hear the footsteps?
I could still hear the footsteps, but I still didn't look behind me. I didn't want to look like a tourist who was really scared, because then I thought, if they know I'm scared, then they'll, walk past.
They'll sense fear like dogs.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, they'll sense fear. So I kind of kept it casual, but like I knew what I was doing. But meanwhile, my eyes are scanning everywhere. And I finally got to the bit where the stand that I'm meant to be at. And I'm waiting, going, oh, I think I missed it because it was 10 o'clock. Then a whole group of people came, but they were family, so I thought, oh, that's okay, right?
They're not going to kill me.
No, they're not going to kill me. So then they started talking to me in Spanish.
Oh, whoops.
I'm like, I don't understand you. So our whole interaction was all pantomime. And we were trying to work out where the bus was, and I'm acting this out, going, oh, I think you got to go over there, and they're like, what? And so it was. In the end, it was quite funny. So she heard the husband said, or the wife said to me, "You go with my husband," but she acted it out, and then I've acted out driving bus. Like, let's all go together. It was so yes, I didn't die, I didn't get mugged, didn't get killed, but
and you eventually found your way back to New Jersey.
Well, luckily, kind of yes, because I did again. I wasn't too sure, and the bus was packed by this stage. And I had this. They were from Venezuela on a holiday,
nice.
And she felt so connected with me that she was looking through her wallet, thinking, what can she give me? So she gave me this little. It looked like a business card, but it was laminated, and it had the flag of Venezuela on it, but it had like the Lord's Prayer in Spanish. I was like, oh, that's so cute. And I happened to have, I think it was an Australian flag badge, like those souvenir things. So I gave it to her. Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
So we had this exchange, and they told me, oh, I think you have to get off here at this stop. I went, oh, thank you. So, yeah.
Oh, so all's well that ends well. My favourite part of Aggie's story is her interactions with that Venezuelan family who reached into their belongings and gave her a prayer card. Reminds me of what I was saying about the Japanese people giving me stuff before too. So, things went wrong and it all worked out. And that's what I'd like you to remember. If you're ever worried before you travel about things going wrong, remember that, things go wrong all the time, but it usually works out okay. And things go wrong at home as well. It's just that, when we're in a familiar environment, I guess it doesn't seem quite as bad. But, so keep travelling, people. Now that's it for today's episode 73 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. You'll find the show notes at notaballerina.com/73. and the links and stuff I'm about to mention are all going to be in those show notes. So first up, I do recommend heading to Luke's site, Wild Sumatra. I've got a link in his blog in the show notes, and it's at wildsumatra.com/blog. Lots of beautiful photographs of remote Indonesia, and just some really interesting stuff to read about as well. You can listen more to Kristen at the Positive Psychology Podcast, so you can just look that up, or go to her website, which is at strengthsphoenix.com/listen. And last but very far from least, the lovely Aggie Lim, who you can find at the blog called Drawn to Explore. She's a sketch artist who does all kinds of cool things, and you can find her at aggielim.com.au. Please, please, please hop over to our Facebook group. You can search for it on Facebook by searching for Thoughtful Travellers and ask to join, and tell us what's gone wrong on your travels. We can all share our woes and how they turned out to be okay. You can also catch me on Twitter at Amanda Kendall. Use the hashtag ThoughtfulTravelPod. And as usual, I don't do this every time, but I would love if you have enjoyed listening to the Thoughtful Travel podcast, if you hopped over to iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts, I think it's supposed to be called these days, and leave a review. Ratings and reviews really help new listeners to find our podcast, and it would be most appreciated. Thank you so much. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.